Let's pretend. Close your eyes. You can feel the Cactus League sun beaming down on your face as you sit in the stands at Sloan Park and watch the back end of the Cubs rotation all come together. All this and more. Fun to pretend, isn't it? On a new Wednesday edition of Locked On Cubs.
You are Locked On Cubs, your daily Chicago Cubs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Good morning, Locked On family. Happy Wednesday to you and yours. Welcome in to Locked On Cubs. I'm your host, Andrew Bellison, longtime public address announcer at Wrigley Field. Now proud to be part of the Locked On family, part of your family, the Locked On Cubs family, proudly part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for downloading us wherever you find your favorite cast. We're free and available. And thank you for making Locked On Cubs your first listen each and every morning. I know we ramble about it, but honest to goodness, I can't tell you how much it means to me. Join us on social media at Chicago Cubs PA, at Locked On Cubs. Check us out on YouTube as well. We got a great YouTube page that we're trying to put some fun content on too. So many great things to get to today. As of right now, with this show going on, and we might be delayed, so things could change, but there is no agreement yet on a new CBA. So let's just start out with that. First and foremost, by the time you see this, that may have changed. I'll preface by saying that. But as of right now, nothing new to report. Great stuff to get to today on a great Wednesday edition of Locked On Cubs. We're going to continue our 2022 fantasy baseball outlook questions. Little Frank Schwindel talk, Frank the Tank, solid sleeper pick. Stay tuned to find out. Also continue to examine our fake spring training headlines. We hope to get spring training underway here shortly, but we don't have it right now. So in other words, what would we be analyzing if the Cubs had been hard at work at camp for 3 weeks like they should have been to this point already? And where does David Ross stack up against the other 4 National League Central managers? This is a several-part series of ranking the Cubs against the rest of the National League Central. It's a lot of fun. Several parts in that. So, with that said, let's jump right in. Fantasy baseball has exploded the last several years. We took a look at this yesterday, Ian Happ's late-round sleeper value, and today it's Frank the Tank. I didn't know if we were going to have enough time. I didn't know, but we do. Let me preface this by saying I haven't played fantasy baseball since high school until last year. So taking advice from me is probably not the smartest thing in the world to do. However, here I am analyzing Cubs-related fantasy outlooks for 2022. And Frank Schwindel checks all the boxes of this is a guy you want, right? Well, here's the backstory. So after the Cubs traded away Rizzo and KB and Baez midseason, several players were then thrust into starting roles that we wouldn't have otherwise seen. One of those, Frank the Tank Schwindel, and he dominated. I mean, legitimately dominated. We've talked a lot about him here on Locked On Cubs. With the increased playing time, check out these numbers. 56 games in the second half of last season. Schwindel hit .342, got on base 39% of the time, slugged over 600, clubbed 13 homers, drove in 40, and scored 42 runs. That is insane, okay? Frank the Tank, as he quickly became known as, was one of the best hitters in the league after the trade deadline and really is now in line for regular at-bats as the starting first baseman for your Chicago Cubs going into 2022. How do you feel about that? It's a good thing, right? What about from a fantasy point of view? All good from a fantasy perspective, right? Let's dig a little deeper. Can we trust Schwindel in a 2022 draft? Can he be a top 10 option at the first base position just based on that very limited but great body of work from 2021? Not 100% sure. I'm going to just be honest. Here's the glass half full. He posted above average contact, zone contact, and whiff rate last year with an impressive 15.8% strikeout rate. That's very low, a guy who has the power that he did. And this falls right in line with his 15% minor league mark too. So consistency there is key. Nothing that was, tilting or glaring one way or another. That was right in line with what we kind of expected from him based on his minor league body of work. Now, Frank projects as a potential 270 plus hitter in 2022, but the power has to be questioned a little bit. I mean, 13 home runs in 56 games last year. That is a ton of Crank City. And can he do it again? He was on pace for about 35 dingers last year. But if you go a little bit deeper, did so with a relatively pedestrian 40% hard hit rate and 87 mile an hour average exit velocity. So that put him at 222nd out of 261 hitters with the 200 plus BBE, and his average exit velocity on fastballs and line drives wasn't much better at 205th. Okay. So for those not as well versed in the deeper sabermetric numbers, and I'm not sitting here trying to pretend that I am, not the best news in terms of how his numbers stacked up to that comparison that I just gave you there. So what's the deal then with Frank Schwindel? I'm not saying he's not a decent power bat because he clearly is, but I think it's fair to expect more in the vicinity of 25-ish, 22 to 27 home runs than the 35 he was on pace for in 2021. Still fair, right? Heck yeah, you take that all day. In terms of fantasy, I think that Schwindel could be a very solid corner infield or utility bat for your club in 2022. I wouldn't necessarily count on him as your number one starting first baseman, depending on league depth. I think this is what I think, and I don't know nothing, obviously. Projections are not my game, but here I am giving them to you anyways. 270 to 275 average, 23 to 25 home runs in 2022. Slightly less valuable in on-base percentage format thanks to his lower walk rate. So see how your statistics and your fantasy league are taken. Overall, still a very viable offensive player, especially in the deeper leagues. And again, you got a first base, corner infield, utility bat option. Now, with all of that said, could he totally turn heads and go the other way, picking up right where he left off in 2021? Absolutely. Could he hit 310 with 39 home runs? Yes. Here's the good news. You kind of know what you're getting, even though the sample size was limited. I think the body of work in 2022 is going to be really good. And here's the biggest deal. He's going to get regular, consistent at bats over the course of a 162 game season, and he's going to hit in the top third of that Cubs lineup more often than not. So, from a fantasy perspective, I do really like it. So keep that in mind. See where you can draft him. Watch Ian Happ, Frank Schwindel might be semi-sleepers on the Cubs in terms of your fantasy outlook in 2022. Spring training started. We're pretending, remember? And we have headlines to analyze in terms of how the back end of that rotation is shaping up for David Ross. But before we get there, I know football's over, but basketball's in full steam for both college and the NBA. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance props, to where the next fire coach is going to land, betonline.net is the number one spot for all of your betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news all season long. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, UFC odds, right to Olympic coverage and information. Head to their website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Cubs rotation talk coming up next. This is Locked On Cubs. Welcome back into Locked On Cubs. I'm your host, Andrew Bellison. Thank you for taking the time to be with us here today. Thank you for making Locked On Cubs your first listen each and every morning, whether you're going to work, in the car on the way to school, at home, getting the kids ready, getting the pups ready. Do you have a cat? Want to thank you for downloading us wherever you find your favorite cast. We're free and available on all platforms. Also, want to remind you that Locked On MLB Prospects host Lindsey Crosby is a prospect encyclopedia, and he's going deep on the MLB stars of tomorrow. Locked On MLB Prospects, free and available wherever you find your podcast, just like Locked On Cubs. Engage with us on social media at Chicago Cubs PA, at Locked On Cubs. Love to talk baseball with you guys, NL Central, Cubs, whatever's on your mind. Shoot us a note on Twitter. Happy to engage. Let's be respectful of each other's opinions, however. As I mentioned, at the time of this show, no news on the CBA as of yet. That could change by the time you see this. If that's the case, great. We hope. If not, I did my due diligence here and provided an update for you. Nothing as it stands right now. So close your eyes, please. Imagine you're in the desert or down in Florida, grapefruit action, the spring training sun bouncing off your face. There's a banter in the air, the crack of the bat. Baseball is back in its spring training version. Along with it comes all the headlines that we normally dig into because we've been starved all winter. We have to pretend because we haven't gotten there yet. But this is a really fun activity that we've been doing the last couple of shows, and we're going to continue to do it. Shahadav Sharma of The Athletic wrote this awesome piece of storylines for the Cubs that we would be analyzing had they started camp when they should have. So it's fun to pretend, is it not? And one of the biggest headlines clearly would have been the back end of the Cubs rotation, right? The Cubs come into 2022 with a much better situation at the top of their rotation, and we have beaten the dead horse. But look at what they have. Hendricks returns to normal form, or more normal form, what we're accustomed to seeing him throw like compared to 2021. Throws Stroman into the mix, and Marcus told Locked On Cubs on Twitter he's the number 2. Hendricks is the number 1. And then additionally, at the top of that rotation, you've got Wade Miley, who has been a super under the radar pick and is going to be huge for this Cubs team in 2022. The deal with Miley started implementing a cutter more in 2018, and outside of the 2020 season, which was disjointed anyways, been really strong ever since. So that's 1, 2, 3, boom, 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 that the Cubs should feel super comfortable with at the top of that rotation. Much different feel from last spring. I love their top 3. Now, this resurgence, we'll call it, at the top only helps mask any shortcomings at the back end, in my opinion. And we have talked about a lot of back end rotation options for David Ross, and I can't wait for these clubs to get in camp so we can kind of see this all sort itself out. But the talent pool to choose from for the 4th and 5th starter spots may be better than we realize. We've gone over this, but options, how about Adbert Alzolay? Showed flashes of brilliance over the last couple seasons, but ultimately struggled to put lefties away, bringing up questions about his long-term outlook as a full-time starting pitcher. Question marks surrounding Alzolay. Can the cutter he developed be the weapon he needs against those lefties? Or maybe the curveball comes back, or the changeup takes a step. With Adbert and so many other pitchers, especially some of the younger guys, it's the old real estate adage, right? Location, location, location. Locate the four-seamer. That'll help more than anything in the world. And he can play everything else off of that, right? There are options there, and he certainly has shown that he has the arm to make leaps in development and be a steady part of the Cubs rotation. Will we see it in 2022? I hope so, because I have preached this for so long. I love Alzolay. Remember when he made his debut? I personally pull for him strongly. What's another option for 4-5? Alec Mills, probably best fit as a starter. That would make the Cubs essentially have 4 contact-oriented starters in the rotation, but it can work, especially if the defense is short up a little bit. Horner, Madrigal up the middle might make a splash at shortstop still. We don't know. Mills, another option. Where do you go from there? And again, you got to be pumped hearing all these names. We got to get these guys in camp and see what they're able to do. Justin Steele and Keegan Thompson are names you've heard us throw around here on Locked On Cubs. They also showed great flashes last summer. Steele really turned it on at the end of the year, and Thompson had a strong final outing after really struggling down the stretch in the final months for the most part. Corey Abbott, you've heard his name mentioned a little bit. Will he earn a spot? Here are the biggest questions in terms of the back end of the Cubs rotation. And this is fun, though. This is us analyzing something that we would be talking about, depending on how these guys were performing in spring, but we haven't had the chance to see them do that. What free agents will the Cubs add to the mix? And obviously, this whole question hinges on that. Will Caleb Killian be ready? Likely not till later in the summer. Another super intriguing prospect. Spending more when the lockout is lifted is something I feel the Cubs are going to do. And I imagine that this could be another arm or two. Is that not fair to say? Might not be a super high profile guy. We talked about Danny Duffy from the Royals coming off arm surgery, not going to be ready to pitch until summer, won't be in a rotation spot like he was accustomed to with the Royals all these years. Could be a bullpen guy that slots into the rotation in 23. Some sort of move like that, maybe. It'll be really interesting to see once camp starts and breaks what kind of improvements, if any, Alzolay, Steele, or Thompson have made over the winter. If one of them has made any sort of leap, that would really help David Ross try to solidify the back end of that rotation, which was obviously a gigantic weakness in 2021. Again, wish we could see some live action to really dig deeper on this. Soon, we hope. But so many intriguing options there. Cannot wait to see how this all shakes out. I have to ask you, Locked On family, a very important question. Is David Ross the best manager in the National League Central? Stay tuned for our opinion on this coming up shortly. Before we get there, you hear us talk about it every day, but I'm telling you, the stuff is good. Built Bar. This is the time of year. New Year's resolutions, out the window. It's March, right? You gave up. You don't want to eat healthy anymore. The food's no good. Well, guess what? If you've incorporated Built Bar into your routine, there's a really good chance that you're still following the plan, because Built Bar is a protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, and you actually like the way it tastes. Go to Built.com, scroll down to the macros chart. If you count macros, you'll be blown away. Super high protein, super low calorie, super high fiber, super low carb. Follow keto. Built Bar is cool for you. Compare it to like a normal junky, sugary candy bar. It is light years better. Most candy bars are loaded with calories, tons of sugar that kills your insides and immune system. You don't want to put that in your body. Plus, listen to these flavors: mint brownie, coconut almond. Just for this month only, it's a special. So hurry up, check it out now. White chocolate cookies and cream. Sensational. Anyways, go to built.com, use promo code LOCKED15. You'll get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCKED15 at built.com. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's really impossible for your local auto parts store or dealership to stock all the parts you ever need for your car. But if you go there, you're probably going to pay too much anyways. Save time and money. Use Rock Auto. Why spend 30, 50, even 100% more when you can save? Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers like us for over 20 years. Rock Auto prices are reliably low for every customer, and they have everything you need, from brake parts, tail lamps, even carpeting. Listen, go to Rock Auto right now. See all the parts available for your car or truck. Right Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box, so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts you'll ever need. RockAuto.com. We grade David Ross out compared to the rest of the National League Central Division when we return. Good morning again, Locked On fam. Welcome back in. This is Locked On Cubs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making us your first listen each and every morning. Check us out on YouTube, Locked On Cubs YouTube page. Lots of fun stuff posted there. So we're doing a fun activity here on Locked On. We're ranking how the Cubs stack up over the next several episodes against the rest of the division in certain categories. The other day, we looked at their rotation compared to the rest of the National League Central Division. And today, we're going to move on to the managerial role. Where does David Ross stand among his peers in the National League Central? Well, let's give a little backstory. David was handpicked by Theo Epstein and Jed Hoyer before Theo and the Cubs parted ways to lead this club when Joe Maddon and the team went adios. For what it's worth, I'm a huge David Ross guy. I love the guy. I love the player. I love the broadcaster. He was so good in the booth. I love the manager. I did a few events with David back when I was with the Cubs, and I told him, man, you are so good in the booth. I talked to Sutcliffe about this as well. You could just tell the fun they had together. And that insight is something that I actually miss with him in the dugout because we don't get that. But I love seeing him in the dugout as well. Took a team to the playoffs in 2022 in his first year in the dugout as manager. A shortened year, tons of extenuating circumstances. Very impressive thing to do. Last year, in a down year, arguably did his best work after the core was traded away. Finished 34-26. It's impressive as hell considering what went on during last season. I here at Locked On Cubs have been on the extend David Ross train for a while. He's the right guy for the job, but how does he stack up against the rest of the division? Okay, let's go bottom up. We have two essentially incompletes or fourth, fifth place slash not availables, however you want to categorize this. Fifth place or NA or incomplete, Derek Shelton with the Pirates. Listen, as the great Gary Pressey would say, Connie Mack couldn't win with that group. So unfair to judge. He gets the number 5 grade. In fourth place, or again, not available, incomplete, Oliver Marmol with the Cardinals, hired before this season, was a bench coach, played, been in the organization under Mike Schilt when he was at the helm of St. Louis, still can't judge, need to see a body of work. So 2 incompletes. So we're working with 3 other clubs, the Cubs, the Brewers, and the Reds. Third place in the division for middle of the road manager, I'm going David Bell. Long family lineage, great baseball family, really good major league career for David Bell. Took the Reds to the playoffs in 2020. First season was 2019. Had he snuck the Reds in last year, given the injuries, et cetera, that they had, I would definitely give him more clout, but he didn't. Middle of the pack for David. I'm going to say that the 83 win season last year was fine, but he is the third best or third worst, however you want to look at it, manager in the National League Central Division. That brings us up to number 2. And sound the horns by process of elimination. You're going to know who I ranked as number 1, and it pains me to do it. But at this juncture, I think David Ross, second best manager in the National League Central Division. I love what he brings to the table. Harder-nosed Madden approach. I don't feel he has anything to prove this coming year, but I do feel like now he's getting the pieces he needs to compete and win. I think it's a big year for him. I think we're going to see what he's really capable of at the helm this year with a team that is assembling to be competitive. Love David Ross. I have made no point in trying to hide that. And this pains me so. I apologize, Locked On family. Don't hold it against me, but here goes. Brewers, Craig Counsell, the best manager in the National League Central Division. Listen, Counsell was a scrappy utility guy when he played the game for a long time, got the most out of his ability, and he has been similarly as impressive as a manager. Believe it or not, he took over the Brewers in 2015. It's been that long already. I don't know if you realize that or not. Posted 3 consecutive winning seasons, 17, 18, and 19. He leads teams that consistently perform better than the sum of their parts and still does. I mean, it's pretty incredible, to be honest. He employs the defensive shifts and the platoons and the quick hooks, and his players love him, which I guess as a major league manager, that's probably the most important thing of all. So again, it pains me to say it, and I apologize, Locked On Cubs family, but you got to give credit where credit is due. Craig Counsell, the top manager in the National League Central. But I think that ranking could change depending on what happens this year with David Ross and our Cubs. Again, at the time of this show, no update on the CBA. No new agreement has been reached. By the time you see this, that may have changed. If that's the case, we'll dive into the whole new CBA agreements, yada, yada, yada in our next episode. So just wanted to make that known here today. Also have more fantasy talk, and we'll continue to grade the Cubs and see how they stack up in each category against the rest of the National League Central Division. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday. I want to thank you again for making Locked On Cubs your first listen each and every morning. Now make your second listen Locked On MLB. Paul Francis Sullivan, please call him Sully, brings you his unique perspective on the major leagues past and present. Free and available wherever you get your podcasts, just like Locked On Cubs. Until mañana, we'll see you then. This has been Locked On Cubs.